So comrades, I come before you today to talk about Hillary Clinton. No, really, I'm serious. Hillary Clinton is a war criminal, a capitalist, a crook, a liar, a cheat, a racist, basically everything I hate about this country rolled into one package. She's also a woman. There's no denying it, and you could see it by the way that she was treated by the bourgeois media and by the sexists all across this country as a public figure throughout her entire career. She was body shamed, she was age shamed, she was slut shamed, and she was even gay baited. She's still gay baited. But the thing about Hillary Clinton is she also represents the anxiety that I feel in my stomach whenever people are talking about feminism. She represents bourgeois, transphobic, white feminism. Feminism in the service of empire, basically. And when she ran for president, I felt no joy in it. Either time, I felt no joy in it. I tasted like ashes in my mouth, you know, when I remembered the women and girls that I had known and I had worked with who had been raped and tortured by her policies, the women and girls who were imprisoned by her racism. As other comrades have said before from this microphone, many of the women who turned out for January 21st in DC had bought their bus and plane tickets ahead of time thinking that Hillary Clinton would be winning. They were planning to celebrate the election of someone who laughed as Libyans were slaughtered, who called black men super predators. But they were also planning to celebrate what they saw as a victory for women. These sexist pigs in the ruling class somehow wound up feminism with Hillary Clinton, with racism and war. And I'll really never forgive them for it, because that's why I have that anxiety in my stomach as I sit up here and I want to talk about feminism. I've been shushed and ignored more times than I care to count over the course of my life, passed over for some man to say the same thing that I would have said anyway. When it comes from a man, you see, it sounds professional, it sounds militant, powerful. When it comes from a woman, it sounds hysterical, it sounds whiny, it sounds like we're asking for something. This country wants to tie women's liberation up with the Democratic Party. It wants to tie it up with racism, with classism, and with war. They want me to basically erase myself, erase my own existence of being. But I'm sick of being told to look inside for my own liberation. I'm sick of being told to change my attitude or my perspective on life or my outlook. The smartest woman I ever knew when I was growing up, my best friend at the time, she pulled me aside when we were about 20 years old, and she told me straight up, she said, you know, I'm just going to play dumb from here on out because it's going to be easier for me to be stupid and pretty than it would for me to be who I really am. And it's just easier to live this way, she told me. And so, I mean, how to counter this and struggle for true women's liberation? As Clara Zetkin, one of our leading comrade sisters who helped actually start International Women's Day, had once famously said, bourgeois society is fundamentally not opposed to bourgeois women's movements. So long as the struggle against patriarchy stays focused on what bourgeois society tells us to be focused on, it will continue to reproduce white supremacy, it will continue to reproduce transphobia, it will continue to reproduce capitalism, and it will continue to reproduce war. We will continue to be raped. We will continue to be beaten. We will continue to be killed. We will continue to be stalked and threatened and had violence against us, you know, regardless. We will continue to starve. We will continue to drug ourselves and hurt ourselves. We will continue basically as women to hate ourselves. And I don't know about you, but I just can't live my whole life like that. Like, I can't do it. And I don't think that we can do it. And I don't think that we should have to do it as women, as communists. As Comrade Mao once said, women hold up half the sky. All things considered, between women and people of color, we make up the overwhelming majority of the working class. With a flick of our wrists, we could bring this toxic system to its knees. To that end, International Working Women's Day is on March 11th. We are looking for battle-ready women and girls. We're looking for men to support us. You have the flyers, they're back here. Perhaps we can pass them around. Please get in touch with us. We need your assistance. We need your bodies on the field of battle. I loathe liberal feminism in all its white supremacist, trans-exclusionary, warmongering depravity. But it's up to us red women and girls, to do battle against rape and murder in a revolutionary way. 100 years ago, 100,000 women in the streets of Petrograd sparked a revolution that overthrew the Tsar and raised the status of the working class and oppressed across the world. Our gains were hard-fought and protracted battle, and these pigs in Washington want to see us under their boots. But I always thought the best defense was a good offense. So let's remind them what that looks like in 2017. Thank you. Incredible discussion, comrades. I'm really fired up too. I'm like, it's a great meeting. I just sort of wanted to talk really briefly about fascism and women. I'm really grateful for Lalanne's commentary on the the destruction and the desecration of the Jewish cemeteries that happened in Philadelphia. I think it was more than 500 graves that were desecrated. Anti-Semitism goes hand in hand with fascism. That's no doubt. And it's not because of any one particular thing. It's more a corrupted kind of class analysis where you would blame the most vulnerable. You would blame a small, tiny cabal at the very top and say that, oh, these people are bad. If we can just get rid of these people, then we'll be able to have whatever it is that we want. This is fascism in its purest form, right? We're Marxists. We understand that it's about the working class versus the bourgeoisie, not the working class versus anyone else. It's the working class fighting for its own survival. To go and touch again on women's issues, I'm sorry this is a very small screen, but perhaps people recognize this poster. This is from World War II. It's in Russian, right? And it says, fascism is the worst enemy of women. Rise up and fight it, right? Because another thing that goes hand in hand with fascism is not just anti-Semitism, it's not just racism, it's also sexism. And so anyway, I've been reading this book recently that actually focuses mostly on like how fascism utilizes the destruction and the oppression of women to be able to further its own kind of toxic ideology. So when I come up here and I say, I had to read from a sheet of paper because honestly, to speak about feminism is a very uncomfortable thing for me on an emotional level. It's fraught with all sorts of difficulties, especially in this day and age. But these remarks, I think, are rather from the heart, is that like, this is the first people to go down when fascism rears its ugly head. And as we can all see by Trump's address on Tuesday night, thank you, Bill, for bringing it up, how he suggested that we create a new federal agency, I guess, under the Department of Homeland Security that will be tracking, it's going to be called, I guess, like Voice or something, where it's going to be victims of like immigrant violence or something like this, where they're going to basically create a registry, just like they did in Nazi Germany, to track what kinds of what was it?
That was the thing that got me the most pissed off.
Yeah. So I mean, it's basically to create some sort of registry for hatred and to focus all of this hatred on a very marginalized and oppressed group of workers. It happens this way. It also happens with oppression of women. In a lot of ways, the rank sexism that came out of the last campaign fit par for course for Trump's agenda. I remember actually a friend of mine who looked at the story, I guess it was about like some sort of like, to be very like, vulgar about it, where it was, I guess there was some controversy with Russia, involving Russia, where they were blackmailing Trump with some sort of evidence of him like urinating on women. And my friend, who's a woman of color, said, oh, but the men will love that. Like, that's going to get him extra votes, because there's a good enough contingent of people in this country who hate women enough where they say, wow, that's really cool. Like, I would love to have a president that completely disregards women like that. Everyone could see it, like, after at the inauguration. I wasn't, obviously watching television that day, but where you even saw the way that Trump turned around to his wife and addressed her. And I don't know if anyone in this room has seen it, maybe a show of hands or something, where the live footage actually caught as he said something to her and then he turned around. And this is a woman who's supposed to be like the First Lady of the United States. Her face just fell like he'd hit her. Right? Like he had said something to her that was so violent that her entire face just fell, right? That's something that drums up support for this monster, right? Like this kind of violence against women, this kind of violence against Jewish people, this is something that drums up support for this monster. This is something that people feed off of, right? Because right now what you're facing white supremacy in its worst form, which is its form of being, I'm entitled to something, right? I'm entitled to what other people have. I'm entitled to women's bodies. I'm entitled to be able to be violent to people who are oppressed. And I think that a huge part of this movement towards trying to get more revolutionary women involved, to try and organize revolutionary women, people who have like a real skin in the game when it comes to fighting against fascist like macho-ness, is that it's critical because like Mao had said, women hold up half the sky. And so if you suppress women right off the bat with those sorts of like hints, those sorts of winks to the camera, that sends a really clear message to the rest of the country that it's open season, not just on, migrant people and incarcerated people and people of color, but it's also open season on women. So I would like every woman who's here tonight and every woman who's listening to please just consider that fact, that right now it's your skin in the game. And everybody who was raised during the 90s and the early aughts knows that even though you had Hillary Clinton running for president, things have been pretty fucking bad for women in the last 25 years, to be honest with you. Yeah, maybe you can go ahead and go out and get, in some areas, God knows, an abortion, right? But what does that really mean? Are you getting that abortion because someone has beat you into it? Are you getting that abortion because you can't afford to pay for childcare anymore? Are you getting that abortion because that's the only way that you can access low cost, basically prenatal services? Is this what's happening to women? Women have already been beat back, by various forms of violence in the society. And I think that right now with Trump coming into office, it should really be alarm bells for every single person who has skin in the game to lose to fascist masculinity. So, thank you.